let's talk about interviews. Getting ready for the interview is a really important thing. And part of what you need to do is make sure that you have a really good understanding of the company that you're going to go interview with. I usually do something like a SWOT analysis, that is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, finding out as much as I can from the internet and other sources about the particular company, their place in their industry, and the kind of things that they're concerned about, the kind of things they're looking to make a difference in their world. So I have that cooking in the back of my mind. Another thing that I do is go back to the targeted resume, and I pretend that I'm going to be interviewing me by asking questions based on what they're looking for, what they're willing to pay money for. So for instance, if there's a qualification, and there will be listed in the job description, I'm going to say, tell me a story about a time when you, and then whatever it is that the qualification is. Or come up with an example of how you can say, you know, here's how I've performed in that particular area. Remember, the numbers are your friends. If you can quantify what you've done. Well, for instance, I worked on a project that I had several $1 million worth of responsibilities, or I supervised this many people. Have those numbers ready for that part of the interview. The day before the interview, if it's an interview at a specific place, I actually drive to that place, find out what the best route is to get there, if there are any traffic problems, anything that could cause a delay that might make me late. You don't want to be late for the interview. So you want to be leaving early, getting there early, and being ready, not walking in early, but getting to the place in plenty of time so you're not rushed and at the last minute thinking, boy, I'm sorry I'm late, or I'm not going to make it, or getting anxious driving. You want to have a relaxing, prepared drive to the interview. So I actually drive to the interview place and make sure I know how to get there, where to park, any traffic problems, that sort of thing, and how I would get to the specific place, the specific building that the interview is going to be in. Now, if the interview is done on Skype, which many of these are done these days, look at the background. So right behind me is here's a tree. Well, that's fine. I don't know if I'd use this for an interview, but I would want to make sure that whatever I have behind me is an appropriate setting for the interview. While I was doing a video for this class, I noticed that once I did the video, right behind me I had a book. It was one of those books on The Complete Idiot's Guide to Something. Well, what you could see right by my ear was the word idiot. And you don't want something like that going on if you're going to do a Skype kind of interview. If it is a Skype kind of interview, or if it's a phone interview, make sure you have quiet in the room you're going to be in. No disturbances, no dogs barking, no babies crying, no chaos going on around you. Make sure there's a quiet place where you can listen carefully. So those are things that are important just to get ready for the interview. Sometimes I will call ahead if I'm uncertain about what to wear for an interview because I don't know what the company is like, and I'll say I'll talk to the secretary who scheduled the interview or the recruiter who scheduled the interview. Say I want to make sure that I dress correctly for tomorrow. Would a coat and tie be appropriate? Should I not wear a tie? What do you think? Sometimes I'll ask that, and that has been helpful in understanding how should I dress appropriately for the interview, and shows an interest. In the area of dress, let me just say this: dress conservatively. Women too, dress conservatively, dress professionally, look sharp. If you need a haircut, get a haircut. If you need to shave, men, be sure you shave. So those are just things that are going to go into making a good impression. I'm sure you're good at that and know what to do. When I walk into the interview, I often will have a book with me, a notebook, and in that notebook I have notes on the company. Now I've also prepared flashcards for myself on the interview questions. I don't take those to the interview. I practice beforehand before I go to the interview, so I'm well rehearsed on what they might ask, and I'm not thinking like a person being interviewed, I'm thinking like an interviewer. So as I prepare for the interview, I think, what questions would I ask a person who wanted this job? Not everybody's skilled at interviewing. Sometimes they'll give you a question that you got to watch out for. One of the questions you got to watch out for is this one. Well, tell us a little about yourself. Watch out. Watch out. Only tell them things that relate to the specific job. Don't relax and tell them your life story. By the way, your interview responses should be no more than about a minute or so. And then I often will give my answer and say, does that answer your question? And if they want more, they'll ask for more. But it's a mistake, and I see interviewees do this all the time, where they just keep yakking. They're trying to control, they're nervous, so they're trying to control the interview they figure if I just keep talking, they can't ask me any questions. Big mistake, don't do that. So give succinct, to the point answers. If they ask, tell us about yourself, tell them about your interest in this kind of work and how you came to apply for this kind of job, that kind of thing. Make it pertinent to the interview, the job you're interviewing for. Okay. When you get into the interview, your posture is very important. Generally, I will sit up on the edge of the chair like this, and I'll put you can't see it, if I had a table, I'll put my hands right in front of me on the table. And I'll sit tall, and I will make eye contact with the people that are interviewing with me. This has happened to me, and it may happen to you. You get in the middle of the interview, and you realize this is not the job for you. I remember I had a job I applied for with a major school system, and I got in the middle of the interview, and I just stopped the interview, and I said, you know, frankly, I can tell that this job that you're interviewing me for would not be a good fit for me. I thank you for your interest in me, but really, I'm not the guy you want for this job. And that's okay to do too. If you sense that the job for which you're interviewing is not going to be a good fit, just say so. Say, you know, I really appreciate you inviting me to this interview, but I can see this is not going to be a good fit for you or for me, but thank you for your interest. And perhaps something later will come along and we can talk then. I actually did that, and you know what? I got a job. I got a job from that. There was someone so impressed that I had the skill to say, you know what, this is the wrong job for me, but I really appreciate your interest, and if there's something else comes up, let me know. Go from there. In the interview itself, it's important that when they ask a question, you take just a pause before you answer the question. So they'll ask you a question, and don't just immediately start talking. Make your count. I actually count to myself. I'll say, 1,001. You can't hear me, but I'm actually take a minute. I look down at the table, look aside, and then I look right back at them, and then I'll give my answer. So take a minute and think about what they've asked before you start talking, and then talk briefly. I said, I like that. Does that answer your question? If you feel comfortable doing that. In the interview itself, I want to tell you about how to close an interview out, and here's a good way to do that. And here are some questions that I think you should ask. There are really only 2 questions that you ask at the end of the interview, and it goes like this. So we're coming to the end of the interview, and sometimes they will say, well, Dennis, do you have any questions of us? And your answer would be, yes, I have 2 questions. Number 1. Is there anything today, or what you've learned so far, that would give you any hesitation or pause in offering me this job tomorrow? Based on what we've discussed so far, is there anything that gives you any pause in offering me this job tomorrow? Now that's a great closing question. It's pretty simple, but what you're really looking for is if there's anything that, oh, well, he won't work in this job. Let them spit it out in front of you. Say, yeah, well, I'm concerned about this, I'm concerned about that. And then you have a chance to talk about it. Okay, once you've asked that question, and then the second question I have to ask is, what is the next step in the process? What comes next? And that's it. You don't talk about, gee, can I have Friday off, or can we start this? And by the way, when they come to money, if they ask you about money, like, well, what are your salary requirements? A good answer to that is to answer with a question. Well, what does this job offer? And then if it offers something in your range, say, yes, that would work, or no, that won't work. But the first one who names a figure loses. Remember that. The first one who names a specific figure loses. So if they ask you, what kind of money do you want for this job? How much per hour? What annual salary? Say, well, I've seen the range, and it looks like, based on my experience and based on the range, that we might have a match there. And just leave it at that. They can really only ask you that if they're offering you the job. In my opinion, if they're ready to offer you the job, then we can talk about salary. But some of them are inexperienced and will go ahead and start talking about money right away. So just kind of put that aside and don't answer that. Well, I hope these ideas will help you. So just to review what I've said, prepare well for the interview, rehearse, get yourself ready, be confident. Anticipate what questions they will ask because you think like an interviewer, not an interviewee, and so you're pretty well up on that. Pause just a bit before you speak, and then at the end ask those two questions. Based on what we've talked about so far, is there anything that gives you any pause in offering me this job tomorrow? And then shut up. And then finally, what's the next step in the process? I hope this will help you. Certainly these things have helped me, and I hope they'll be useful to you. See ya.